Tim Heatley. Welcome to the Graft podcast. Now then, I've got to kick this off with, Tim, that when I started out in Graft to do this, never intention of being a podcaster in any way, shape or form, but you were actually one of the first people that I saw on Instagram. I was like, I would love to have somebody like that on the Graft podcast. This is why, though, and I love your handle on your social media. You are a property developer. You are and a failed lawyer. Yep. We're going to dig into that.
Many failures.
But co-founder of Capital Centric. The way that I know you is that I go onto Instagram and I see this guy essentially redeveloping, repurposing run-down buildings that just would become or have become an eyesore on the high street or in local towns, and just creating these amazing spaces for people to either live in or retail environments and so on and so forth. But we'll dig into that. But first and foremost, welcome. How did you become involved and become a property developer? How did you fail being a lawyer?
Oh, I mean, gosh. I mean, if you could write more failures on Instagram, I would do. But I just thought I'll start with one of the big ones, failing at being a lawyer. So failure is definitely how I navigate the world. And so how did I do it? So I suppose entirely accidentally, but I've probably always had a little bit of an interest in buildings, partly because when I did actually get a job and I could get a mortgage, I bought a derelict house. And I remember when I got when your mortgage comes through, you have to do a survey, and it says that the rebuild cost, if the house were to be demolished and rebuilt, it would cost more than I'd paid to buy the house. I thought that's interesting that I bought something that you couldn't build again for the same money. So there's something in that. So I was fascinated by that. And in my lead up to that, before that, when I was at uni, my mates that were studying art, I was studying law. I was the boring one; they were the cool ones. And but I used to see these great bits of artwork that they would create, and they would for topics and courses and study work, and they discard it. And this is when you could only really buy original art if you went into a kind of an imposing, scary gallery setting, and it was going to be 500 quid. And I thought it's fascinating that I could buy their artwork off them, frame it up really nicely, and sell it for a bit more than it cost me, rather than get a part-time job. Because I had a couple of part-time jobs in retail at the Capital Centric in Manchester, and I'd essentially been fired from both of them. So I was no good at that either. So I worked out pretty quickly. I'm probably not that employable, and so, but I'm good. I like things that have been overlooked, discarded, as an opportunity to make some money. And then I did that with cars as well. Whilst I was at uni, I went from doing it with bits of artwork to cars, because there was a big old car auction place near to where I grew up in Eccles in Salford. There's a place called Trafford Park there that still has a car auction there now. And I'm not mechanically minded, but I knew how to make them look fantastic, and I'd spend my weekends cleaning and scrubbing them, making them brilliant. And then, so what I do now is the same thing in a way. It's a kind of an accidental kind of way that I got into upcycling things, repurposing them, bringing them back to life, and then giving them a new lease of life.
Right. Where's that work ethic from, Tim? You're coming out of university or in university, 18, 19, 20, I'm guessing. But whilst your retail experience and career was blighted with firings by the sound of it, but it sounds like you're a grafter.
Yeah, I think I am. It's definitely one of the components, isn't it, of achievement is being able to be a grafter. And I think that, my grandparents were Irish immigrants, and they were grafters. They turned up with a couple of suitcases and not a lot else going on, and they were grafters, and they did really well. And so I think that both my grandparents were, and then my parents in the same way were grafters. I remember there was a tough time as well in our family whereby my dad had worked up to senior management level, had lost his job, and then had a real battle at the time because of the economy to get a new job. And I remember, we went on free school meals, dinner tickets, and I remember feeling embarrassed queuing up to get your free school meal dinner ticket. And I remember thinking, right, well, whatever happens in the future, I'm going to make sure that I can be master of my own destiny financially. I don't want to end up whereby somebody else can put me out and end up with less choices. And so I think that was probably I still probably have that in me now, which is I need to be master of my own destiny, control of money and finance. And I saw that as a route to freedom. Really.
Yeah. Okay. Then, you make it sound really seamless, from buying bits of arts from your mates at uni to doing a few cars up to then taking on buildings. But your projects, just to give people and the listeners, watchers of this a bit of context, you don't just do up terrace houses. You regenerate towns almost in certain circumstances, right? I mean, one of the projects I want to talk about at the moment is I used to work in Crewe.
Right. Yeah.
Right. There are so many ways that I could describe Crewe, and so many ways that people have described Crewe, but I will resist for fear of probably being tracked down, really. But it is one of those areas, isn't it, that's just been completely neglected, run down. The calibre and quality of retailers or traditional retailers slowly starts to diminish, and that's not discrediting, the retailers that go into it. Very often, what you find is it's a high street that is really well populated. 20, 25 years ago, when I used to go into Crewe Town Centre at lunchtime, it was busy. Marks and Spencer's, River Island, Topshop, all these sorts of places, and then slowly but surely it's discount store, lower, closing down store, sale, derelict. You see this kind of process creeping in. It's never normally faster overnight, but it slowly does that. But you're in this project now in the Crewe area of bringing that back to life. So how did you go from the cars element to derelict whatever to now these massive overtaking that you're doing?
A bit of context is, I suppose, it's helpful to get to help understand that we spend between £3 and £4 million a week on what we do. So week in, week out, £3 or £4 million is going out the door, regenerating and improving these places, because it's not, the challenges of Crewe are not particular to Crewe. The same challenges are repeated in towns and cities across the UK. And so I feel like our to-do list is endless. There's never going to be a shortage of our skill set to be able to repurpose these places and make them successful again. And Crewe is one of those places where I walk around and I just see potential, and I've got the benefit of having I'm like the outsider, because I have no preconceptions of what Crewe is like, because I haven't grown up there or lived there. And quite often it's interesting that the people that are most cynical about their place are the people who live there and work there, because they've kind of become entrenched within it. And I get that they can never see that it could be an incredible place to live and an incredible place to work.
That's funny that you say that. That's a really interesting point, Tim, that they've seen what it was, then it's a shithole. And I'm not saying that's Crewe, I'm saying places
we work in,
and then they almost become, well, you can't change it from being a shithole now.
Yeah, there's like a cycle that we've noticed around. So we turn up and initially there's like just that there's like complete skepticism that it'll that we're ever going to actually do anything, and then once you get on to actually making a start on something, there's lots of kind of doubters that'll they always say, you'll never finish it, and then when you finish it, they say, well, it'll be crap and it won't be very popular, and then when it's full, they go quiet. And you never hear from them again. So they never come back on. I've noticed that they never come back on your social medias or the newspaper comments and go, no, in fairness, actually, it's quite popular.
You did do what you said you were going to do. Yeah.
No, they never do that. They just go quiet. And that's okay. And we're used to that. And I suppose what has happened as well over time is that as we've gone on and done it time and time again in more and more challenging locations, then I think people do look a bit now at our track record and go, in fairness, they've done it elsewhere. I might just keep my powder dry before I criticise too much. So that's good. But it definitely helps that we and in a way, what I say to these places as well, the politicians and the public there, I say to them that the opportunity here is that there are other people like me who have no preconceptions about this place other than what they see when they get off the train or the tram or get out the car, and they're presented with a place. And so it matters how it looks, how your town centre, how your public squares look, what events and activities you've got going on, how busy and bustling it is. All that stuff matters. Is it green and verdant? Is it a place for the kids to play? Does it feel safe? And all that things matter, because you need to attract a new audience. Yes, we want to cater for the existing people who live and work there. That's your existing customer base. But in order for any business to survive, you always need to add new customers. And we think of these towns and cities as a business, as a place to attract new people to want to live there. And so you've got to make it attractive, and that's the difference. If any business doesn't evolve, it dies. And it's the same with the building, and it's the same with the town, same with the city. If you don't evolve, eventually you'll become derelict and you'll be empty and potentially demolished. So you need to constantly evolve.
So within that, Tim, if I can dig into a couple of parts of it. First of all, how do you identify these towns? And can you talk to us a bit about the process? Because like if you take Crewe as the example, and it was never an intention to actually make that the example, but you know, where do you start and who do you talk to? Because essentially what you are planning to do, and if you could elaborate on it, it'd be great.
Yeah.
You're going to regenerate the whole town centre.
Yeah.
That's not a small project. So one, how do you identify it? Two, and what's the beginning of the process? Who do you go to?
Yeah, I mean, identification of them is a few different things, really, but because it comes about in different ways. But we do reach out to places like to the chief executives and the political leaders of towns and cities where we think that it needs a boost. So there are different reports. There are kind of like there are all sorts of reports you can get around high street vacancy rates, or around where there's a pressure on green belt, where you need to see new houses being built, but the go-to is the green belt, whereas they could be put in a brownfield site in the centre, and you could make the centre an attractive destination to live. And so you can identify from different reports and things like that there's opportunities in places like that. And so we pick up the phone to the chief execs and political leaders and say, we do this thing whereby we can change the perception of your town with both physical and emotional sort of input into a place. And by doing so, we can take pressure off the green belt, we can rejuvenate your town centre. Are you interested? And lots, understandably, are. And then we say, right, okay, well let's have a look at what land we'd need to buy, what buildings we need to buy, what buildings you might already own, and where we can club together to go, let's put this into a pot and let's find a way of doing something big and meaningful. One of the key components is they've got to have a vision as well. They've got to have ambition. We sort of triage them to make sure that they can deliver, because they have to do lots of work on their side. They've got to be prepared to do the hard yards on their side of things. There's lots of things that they need to put in place to make it work. So we're checking them, like, have they got the rigor and ability to get things to happen on their side? And once we get comfortable with that, and they get comfortable with us, then we'll start to formulate a plan. It does need critical mass and scale. So that means the more assets and land and buildings you can have, the better. Because
really? So the more the better?
Yeah, because we're trying to create a magnetic effect through having the scale of it helps, because you need a bit of almost herd immunity. So if your project is only going to move 50 people into the town centre, well, they'll feel a little bit kind of isolated of an evening. Whereas if you can move 300, 400, 500 people into the centre, there's always lights on, there's always people moving around, walking around. And so these places that have been in the past a place of antisocial behaviour and crime, all of a sudden that disperses. I'm not saying it disappears. It might go, out to, the outer edges of a place, but it certainly doesn't occur in the centre of a place. So, you need scale for that. You need lots of people. You need bodies and eyes on the street, people moving around to make a place feel safe.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's kind of a consideration and a benefit and an effect of what you do as well, right? I would never have thought about that. That it kind of does disperse that when you give anything a facelift, I guess, right? It becomes an area of aspiration rather than one of concern and worry, and people almost keeping away from it, right?
That's it, because if it really, people regenerate a place, not buildings, and so we have to find a way of having. That's our biggest skill set in Capital Centric is to understand human behaviour and understand what motivates people to make a decision to live and work where they work, and that's what we spend all our time obsessing about. Is what are they thinking? How do we get them to consider this as an opportunity in a place, and it's got to be filled and busy and popular, and then the people, it kind of heals itself from the inside out, because the people living there will keep an eye out for their neighbours. They'll keep an eye out for antisocial behaviour. They'll report it, and we've witnessed it. And it's not overnight either. We typically will find that we'll have challenges for 2 or 3 years until the scheme is fully established and fully embedded, and we've dealt with the challenges that can come with the previous antisocial behaviour that was happening in that location. So
yeah. Okay. So to give us some kind of like key things that are taking place as an example, then, if you will. So what is Crewe today?
Yeah.
What's it going to be in the space that you're taking over?
Crewe right now has got it's got a brand new car park, multi-storey car park, and a new bus depot, and then the land is cleared all around it, which was where there was a former 1960s perhaps shopping parade, and then it's got a couple of empty department stores there as well, and it's got a traditional high street dotted around it, but at the moment there's a big void in the centre, and therefore there's bits of land and buildings around it, so there's the potential to create 500 homes, which 500 homes that are a mixture of 1, 2 and 3 bedroom homes, apartments and houses, mean that you could comfortably have 1,500 people living in the centre of it, depending upon the occupancy, how those homes are occupied. So that's a massive difference all of a sudden to have that many people living in the centre. And so from what we've looked at, we can create new public squares with pocket parks. We can create cafe bar spaces, restaurant spaces, reasons to be in of an evening as well, to have people spending more time there. And so areas for different ages and demographics. We find that often in town centres we have young people and young professionals that want to live there. We have young families in townhouses, and then we have older downsizers who want to be right amongst the mix of what's going on in terms of the post office and access to the town centre's GP surgery, but they don't want to be in like a Churchill, McCarthy and Stone development type vibe. They want to be amongst other younger people. So that's the overarching vision. Is a combination of different types of homes for different age groups and so on that are affordably priced. But in terms of the architecture, it's got to be exemplary. It's got to be the kind that you'd see in terms of the best cities in the UK. And so we don't differentiate, in terms of our architecture and our interior design and everything. It's consistent throughout the whole. We don't have a premium version and a cheaper version. It's all identical. If you look at all of our projects, they all have the same focus.
Yeah. How hard is it to deal with? And I know you can't be too critical. I'm not asking you to be.
Yeah.
How hard is it to deal with local council though? Right. And secondary to that question, Tim, is why is Tim Heatley taking these really positive steps to develop these areas? I get there's a financial obligation, a financial opportunity with it, Tim. But at the same time, you're delivering something that in most people's minds, I think, would be, why aren't councils seeing that as the opportunity to do that? I'll rephrase my question. Why do councils let it get to the stage where it's like, this is a dump? Dump's harsh. But in lots, this is an area where people don't want to live, don't want to shop, don't want to eat of an evening, as you say. Why do councils let it get to that stage?
Yeah, so different councils, there is a spectrum.
That'll be edited, right? Sorry.
So, is it difficult to work with councils? Yes, it can be, and there's a spectrum of talent and ability at councils for sure. Now, we like to think that we've kind of like weeded out the
good ones now.
Yeah, so the ones that we're collaborating with, we typically think they are the better ones who can make stuff happen. So that's good. But yeah, and so like any organisation, there is really good people and people who are well intended but hopeless as well. So we have to try and weed them out and then step away from them a little bit and leave them to it.
Well intended but hopeless. I like that.
Yeah,
there's a lot of those people, isn't there?
That's it. I think people, generally speaking, they do want to do good things, but they just, sometimes just lack an ability or gravitas in order to make it happen, or they lack the rigor that you need and the energy and the graft that you need to make something go. So it's and they can be slow, but that's just the public sector process. And so for us, the way that we've got around that and our sort of constant need to feel like we're making progress on all fronts is by having lots of different projects on the go. Even though the public sector might move slowly, there's always something for us to be doing on each project. So by having, because whereas all the way down in Plymouth, all the way up in the northeast in places like Sunderland and Gateshead and Middlesbrough, but places in between, the Midlands, Wolverhampton, we're building an entire new town in Cambridgeshire, the latest new town in England. So by having lots of things on the go, that helps. And how, I don't know, these things these towns and cities end up in decline, I think slowly, because they haven't evolved, and they haven't challenged convention enough, and they haven't kept up with what might be going on at that particular time, and it can the baton can get handed over from one political leader to another, or from one chief exec to another, and over time, almost without realising, things have started to go cut adrift, and they've got worse. And sometimes they need to hit rock bottom before anyone says, "This is a disaster. We need to do something about it." And it is hard to do what we do. It does take, the politicians have got to stick their neck out and say that they're going to do something and make something happen, and that takes political risk, because if it fails, then they'll get they won't get re-elected. And also, there's often a financial commitment required from the council in some form or other. So that might make the chief exec nervous about, well, again, what if we commit financially to a project and there's a problem and there's a commercial failure to it? So there's lots of reasons at councils to just maintain the status quo. And then, as we've said before, maintain the status quo means without realising that you're going backwards. And over time, everyone that keeps turning up to try and just maintain the status quo, don't put your head above the parapet, don't do anything controversial. Over time, towns and cities just go backwards.
Yeah, we're in Congleton, Cheshire, recording this, and I look at a couple of local business people. A guy called Andy Pear owns a Lion and Swan. It was a derelict hotel. It was a horrific eyesore, getting worse. I like that part that we're saying, status quo and clearly going backwards. Regenerated looks amazing. It's a beautiful jewel of the town. People like Chris Carson's started it years ago. Got the first kind of really, there's a bar in town rather than a pub.
Yeah.
I remember being in the hairdressers. That's how long ago it was. And someone saying, "Hi, this geezer's making £5 cocktails." And I was like, "That's bollocks. That's never going to work."
Yeah.
But it did, and it drew people in. And now it's so interesting in Congleton with things like the Market Quarter and the building that we're in, where I'll sit on a train from people coming from Stoke, and we're going, "Oh no, we're not going to Manchester. We're going out in Congleton today."
Yeah, wow.
And they've done that. But I do find it frustrating that it's like that should be the council that are kind of driving that, but maybe they're leaning on people like you more because you are a visionary within it, and it's all, you're always going to have that rigor and drive and graft
I think
more than they are, right?
I think it helps that, and sometimes I have to say to the councils, which is, look, if you put me in charge of children's services and bin collections, I'd be terrible. But equally, if you're in charge of development and regeneration, it'll be terrible because it's not what you're doing all the time and every day. And so you need people that are really passionate about it, and that every waking minute they're thinking about, how do we make this building or this town, this city, this area thriving? And that's what we're doing all the time, and that's what our all the cohort development companies are doing. There's probably not enough of us in terms of Capital Centric. There's probably not enough equivalents of us, and I think there's opportunity for new businesses to become like the scale that we are. I'm sure I'm assuming that they're emerging somewhere else that we don't know about, and so that doesn't help that there's not enough of us that do this type of thing. And so hopefully there will be more, and so. Yeah, I think that the difference is is really down to the organisation, the individual. I think the public sector can do lots of great things well, but making somewhere attractive and cool and interesting and with a great vibe is probably just not their forte. So they do need to collaborate, I think, with the private sector more.
Yeah. How many people are in your business now? Tim, I mean, it's not a small company, right?
No, because we've grown a lot because we're a developer, yes, but we operate the buildings, so we tend not to sell anything. So almost everything we build, we then retain and operate. So, and that's from the apartments right through to the cafe bars as well. And so that makes us really good. And I think that's in terms of really good at not, we are the end user in many ways.
Okay.
We're not looking to sell it at completion, which creates all sorts of problems and challenges. So as a result, it means that we can do more because we know that at the end of it, we can occupy the space, we can move our residents into the building, and then even the commercial spaces, we can operate them ourselves or with partners, and it'll be popular. And so we've grown operationally a lot. And of course, we've got the construction side. At any one time, we have several sites under construction. So there's always about 800 and 1,000 subcontractors on our sites at any one time. But at head office, in terms of the day-to-day, right at the very centre, there's about 40 of us, 50 of us, so quite lean in many ways. And then we've got community managers and building operatives as well, and keeping everything on the actual main completed projects that keep everything clean, tidied. We've got our own, grounds maintenance people, cleaners, everybody really that keeps the whole thing going. And so I try not to think about it too much because it's scary.
It freaks you out a little bit.
It does a bit. They see me do a big gulp then when I think about the numbers. Even £3 or £4 million a week is scary. But we always just the thing that I'm always looking at. Our key metric is: are we retaining our residents in our buildings? Our workspaces, our offices. Are we keeping people in there or are they leaving? Because it's almost easy to attract a new customer, but are you keeping that customer? It's really important. And so that's the stickiness of that is our key metric. We're always thinking and obsessing about how we keep people that want to live or work in our spaces. And we have a variety of spaces, workspaces and homes. The one thing that we don't operate ourselves is hotels. We've built some and developed some, but we don't operate them. But the rest of it, we love to operate, and that helps us because then we can curate a community over time. And really, one of the things that we say is some of the most valuable businesses on the planet are online communities. You got Instagram and TikTok and hugely valuable communities of people who are on these platforms. And for us, we have physical communities, and that's got great value to it. And so I think our approach and philosophy is different to a lot of developers who will build something and flog it off and then go and start again. For us, it's kind of evergreen. We just we want to continue to nurture and look after a place and optimize it and keep it busy. And that's how we have achieved kind of the growth that we've achieved. It's longer term. It's not smash and grab. But we think that over time, that compound kind of growth has shown to be the better way forward.
Brilliant. Tim, what's your favourite bit? What's your worst bit about what you're doing?
Favourite bit is the before and after, kind of going back to a place when it's done and it's completed and it's full and busy and thriving, and I can walk around and I can see that you've changed how people live their lives, and because they wouldn't be living there or working there had you not have done a thing, and sitting there and having a cup of tea and just observing people and how they're interacting with it and seeing, were we right? What did we get wrong? That's my favourite bit, is that human behaviour thing again. That
must be tremendously rewarding to sit and have a brew and watch people walking into a coffee shop, smile on their face, coming out of the house that they've got. That's great. A green area as well that you don't. I know that's so important to you as well. That's you don't overlook those. That must be an incredible feeling.
Kids having a bit of a kickabout on the green. Literally, we put bird boxes up and we have beehives, and the sound of bees and birds as well is cool. So that tells me that you can see that we've regenerated a place. People have said, "Oh, did you commission a report to see if you've had a positive social impact?" And it's like, we do, but if you need a report to tell you that, then we failed. You should be able to have a look,
see it and feel it.
And feel it. And when people turn, you sat in it could be in a bar, and a friend comes in and they greet another friend, they have a hug, and you're like going, "These are lovely moments that are occurring in a place that we've created." And people get married in our buildings a lot. We've had a lot of weddings in our building. That's a key test for us for architecture and design. If you made a great place, you want to create a place that's good enough that people want to spend the most special day of their lives in, and that's a good test for us. Even if it's an apartment building, I kid you not, people get married in our apartment buildings, which is great, and find that really, and that's a good test. And so that's the best bit. And then the worst bit is that I constantly will then also at the same time look around that completed project and find fault, and I feel like that's my job is almost to not be too kind of self-congratulatory and pat myself on the back and say, isn't that great? It's actually to go, what did we do wrong? How can we do it better? And it's a curse because it means that you can't fully enjoy a thing. And I'm like that all the time. I walk around and go, that's not right. We did that wrong. We can't do that next time. That's broken. That's a poor quality detail, and I'm obsessive and always have been. And I think it's just, it's part of me.
Yeah. What are you good at? What's Tim Heatley good at? What's Tim Heatley working on to get better at?
I'm bad at lots of things.
Let's start with the good though, because because it's hard a self-reflection bit, right? Without a question, but I want people to really hear that. There's the bits that you're talking about there, saying that's not great, that's not great. That is a skill set, right? That's basically driving improvement. That's being self-analytical is a great thing to be when you're in business to get better and better. But what do you feel you're good at?
I think I'm good at it's kind of a good and bad thing in a way. I don't get sucked into the detail on things because I'm just fundamentally trying to always keep myself on where are we going? Like what we're trying to achieve here with this place or this space. So let's just there's loads of reasons why it won't work and you can't do it and it's going to be a problem, it's hard. But I tried my best to kind of go, okay, that's fine, but what we need to do something here. We need to make this happen. What have we got to do? So I'm good at not getting dragged into the detail and trying to explain a vision and communicate that to the powers that be and the public. I think I'm good at communicating that to people to go, it can be great, and reassuring people that we can make it happen and it'll be worth the effort and it'll be fantastic. So I think I'm good at, I can just, when I go into it, I can see how it's finished, how it'll look. I can see where the sofas are going to be, and I can see where the coffee shop and the bar will be and the public square will be. I can just see it. It's a kind of like a thing that I'm able to do, and I've always been able to do that. And then I can come away from that and I can be sat in a meeting in a different location and I can be chatting to the architect and the interior designer and the landscaper, and I can talk to them about details, and I can see them kind of going, they need to pull a photograph up on the screen where it's in my head. I can see it. I can say, yeah, because around that corner you've got another window and there's a door and we need to find an entrance. And I can see them going like, so I've like a map in my mind. It's like a dollhouse map in my mind of a place. So that's helpful because I can envisage something really easily. So that helps. I can just kind of project what that's going to be like when it's done. And then I just need to kind of go, right, we need to hit that thing and bring everybody along with me to do that. So I'm good at that. And that's about it, really. Everything else I'm not good at.
And what are you working on? What do you kind of check yourself on and go, got to get better at that?
Well, loads of things. So sometimes being bad at detail can be a problem, especially when you're starting out, because you've got to do everything, haven't you? You've got to read a contract. You've got to, build a financial model for something.
I hate detail. It makes me angry. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? When you in my business of selling things and. Nothing to the extent that you're talking about, but hey, this is a product and it'll add this benefit to your consumers when they walk in, and I can see what that looks like, and it's great. Then you get a spreadsheet, and I'm like, I'm angry. I hate that shit. Honestly, it just drives me nuts.
You kind of got to do it, and that's one of the benefits I think of getting to be in a big organisation is that we've got financial directors and controllers and analysts and other people doing loads of great numbers and brilliant work, and that's fantastic. And I don't have to do that, and I did have to do it for a bit. And also, my business partner Adam is brilliant at those things as well. So pretty early on, when him and I buddied up, which is where the name came from. I was Centric, he was Capital, and then you've got Capital and Centric. Pretty early on, it was like, right, you're better at that stuff. I'll focus on this stuff, and it has worked really well. So other things I'm working on are, I'm 1 million miles an hour, and I'm probably not that easy to work with because I can be obsessive and very passionate and driven for speed of delivery. So I'm always trying to work on kind of like being a bit more chill and a bit more sort of helping people to catch up to where my head is. And so people who work with me a long time get to it's almost like Tim speak, which is, I'll just jump into something, I'll start a conversation about something, and I'll give them no context. And they have to go, I think he's talking about that project in that location, and I think he's talking about this particular issue. But so I've had the thought in my head, and I think that they know what I'm talking about, but they don't. And so, I'm things like that. And there's lots of things like that I'm not good at,
Okay. Couple of bits before we close, Sim, that I want to ask you about. What's been your favourite project? What have you done? And it could be big or small, it doesn't matter, but what was your favourite project and why?
I think my favourite project is probably, it changes a bit, but we often are referred to as a social impact developer. And so making a positive impact on a place is really important. And that's partly because, I mentioned earlier, as I grew up as a kid, my mum and dad, especially when my dad lost his job, started to foster young adults with learning differences. So I've always grown up around people that have had, challenges in life because they've got learning difficulties. And so as a kid, I've always had that. And so you kind of realise that you're in a fortunate position to not have any of those challenges. And so social impact has always been a key driver of ours, which is if you can make a positive difference to people's lives, then that's got to be, if you're in a privileged position to do that, you've got to do that. That's what you've got to do, so that's been a big motivation, a big kind of like guiding light for us ever since the start. There's a project in Farnworth. Farnworth was rife with antisocial behaviour and crime right in the town centre of Farnworth, a suburb of Bolton. And I went to have a look at it because there was a Manchester Evening News report that said it was the cheapest place to buy a house in all of Greater Manchester. And there's a reason for that, because it wasn't that nice. And so I went
That's
and
a
had,
nice term.
went and had a look
It
around.
wasn't that nice.
Yeah, went and had a look around, and I just went and had a look around, and I felt a little bit intimidated walking around. Almost, it felt a little bit scary because I saw some antisocial behaviour and some sort of a bit of youth crime and some issues, and I thought there's something that could be done here. So we've redeveloped that and created a lot of new public space, over 100 homes and townhouses that are zero carbon, and we've put some cafe bar and spaces into the ground floor, and we've had loads of antisocial behaviour issues to deal with, loads of crime to deal with, and loads of challenges. But we've been able to. We are now turning the tide on that and making it a much better town, a much better place. And it's lovely to hear the feedback from the people who live there, who understandably were quite rightly sceptical and fearful, and didn't think that it would happen, or didn't think that it'd be very good. And so I think that from where it was to where it is probably the biggest single project that has made the most transformative effect on a place, because there's nothing else that's happening in Farnworth in that regard. So I could pick other projects in like Manchester or Liverpool or Sheffield, but they've got other projects happening in them. So I can't really claim to say that it was our project that made the difference. Yeah. But you absolutely can in Farnworth, and so it's changed lives in Farnworth generation for the better, and one of the key things that we've done there is some of those young adults that were causing problems is working with them and hanging out with them and with colleagues, and finding ways in which we can change their behaviours, and that's worked as well. So much of what we do isn't building properties; it's working with people and places to make them better.
How much, Tim, do you work with the youth of today? Not trying to sound ancient when I say that, but what are you seeing from people 18 to 21 year olds that are coming into industries like yours? What are you looking for? Because I kind of a project we're working on at the moment here at Graft is it's how Graft started. It was a conversation with my son about you do realise you're going to have to graft at some stage, mate, right? And we kind of see this group where they're a little bit like slow to jump on that. Oh shit! Yeah, it is on me. I'm going to have to actually work hard, sort of thing. Are you seeing much of that? What's your business doing to kind of bring that sort of group in?
Well, we were looking at when we were trying to recruit people as a business. We noticed that the cohort that were coming through were kind of like it was often a white middle class, often male cohort that were kind of encouraged by their parents to get into the sector and to apply for the job, and you saw that they were almost reluctantly there, but their parents worked as in the property industry, and therefore that's why they were there. So that wasn't encouraging diversity of thinking. It wasn't, it was kind of encouraging. It was encouraging groupthink. It meant that we weren't able to kind of relate to the areas that we were trying to regenerate, because these middle class kids were not
from there.
It's very hard to communicate with these those places. So in 2017, we founded a non-profit called Regeneration Brainery, and that now has scaled across the UK, and it works with adults from 17, 18, 19, and it from a much more broad demographic, and it gets them into the built environment sector. So they undertake a 1 week program, and it's inspirational, not educational, because these kids have been educated within an inch of their lives. They're sick of sitting in classrooms, and we get them out and about, and we show them what they can do. And it's not construction, because there's great programs that do construction. It's professional services, so it's architecture, project management, landscape design, quantity surveying, well-paid jobs. And we explain that to them. We take them to these nice offices and fancy offices, and we say, you can work here, and you can be on the construction sites as well, and look at the cars in the car park, look at all those fancy German vehicles and so on. That's social mobility is really important, and a program like that has been able to do that, and I'm dead proud of that. And it works with a couple of thousand young adults a year across the UK, and they are out there, they are motivated, but they are often bored of education. Education isn't relevant to a lot of what they want to do in their career. And so I think the education sector agrees, but doesn't know how to change it, which is at the minute we are boring the kids, and we're not teaching them stuff that they feel like they need to know for modern work and life. So we can't change that, but we can inspire them about the jobs of the future.
Amazing. Last question. I think your story is awesome, Tim. Honestly, I mean, Thanks. Like I say, I watch your Instagram reels, and and I've shown them to my kids, and I've shared your story with a lot of people. Just because I care about where I live and I care about the area that we're in, and I look at so many places and go, to your point that you mentioned, that this is somebody's home. It wasn't always like this, and to see the lift that you are giving. And I'll tell you what is refreshing about your story that I think is you seem to have a very acute lens of, this isn't about new building, cafe, see ya, good luck. You sound very entrenched in, okay, what's it look like today? Why is it going to improve? What it'll look like tomorrow? How does the then community then make it what it is, rather than just a good luck with that and off you go to your next project? It's great to hear. You sound like an incredible grafter. What does graft mean to you?
I think for me it's fear of failure, constant, ongoing fear of failure. I've almost institutionalized myself around failure. Like I feel like I still have to get out and make something happen every morning. Otherwise, if I don't, there'll be some implosion. And a constant where you can make a difference and help in all. I mean that globally, when you can, you can give your colleagues great new projects to work on. You can be involved in social mobility transformation projects. Yeah, I co-founded a charity with Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity. So that's a great motivator around helping people around homelessness and reducing that. So for me, it's like while you've got the energy in you and you can make a difference, then you should, because you're in a privileged position whereby you've got a great upbringing, and a great family background, and therefore a great business with great colleagues, and so it's like really privileged. A great board of trustees on the couple of charities that I'm involved in, and it's like if you're in that position, you've got to do something positive with it. You can't just you got to take out what you can. So that's graft really is for me is making sure that I'm not leaving I'm not leaving any stone unturned in terms of optimizing it for everybody involved.
Tim Heatley, thank you so much for coming on the Graft podcast. Like I say, but really, really inspirational and great to hear some of the projects that you're working on. I really look forward to going back to Crewe. I do think it is a project where just look at the infrastructure around it. Everyone, if I ever mention Crewe, someone goes, "Oh, where the railway is." It's like, yeah, exactly. It's a central hub of what was the postal system once upon a time, right? Why wouldn't that work around there? And so, I'm really, really pleased that is going under the regeneration of it, and keep doing what you're doing, because it's so important. And it's a shame that it's not in the spectrum of perhaps I think it should be within councils and governments to do that upon themselves, but then we need people like you and your business to bring those things to life. But thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed it. Thanks, Ben. Thank you. That's a wrap on this week's Graft. Please make sure you follow the podcast from wherever you listen or watch from so you don't miss an episode, and we'll see you next week.